Hi, everybody. It is Saturday, May 13, 2017. My guest today was a six-time All-Star between 1960 and 1962. He is a member of the Baltimore Orioles Team Hall of Fame. His great season was in 1961, 46 home runs, 141 RBIs, third in the American League MVP voting. He had 2 Grand Slams in consecutive innings that year, 5 Grand Slams total in his career. 5 Grand Slams in that season. 6 in his career. He is Diamond Jim Gentile. And Jim, I really want to thank you for joining me today. You were born in San Francisco in 1934. How was life growing up?
Oh, it was fine. I was raised by my grandmother, and I lived out in the Sunset District and went to Catholic Grammar School and then went to Sacred Heart High School and signed with the Dodgers out of my 1952, out of my senior year.
How did that happen that you were raised by your grandmother? What happened?
Well, I never met my father, and my mother was just too good looking for her own good. She got married 4 times. I had 2 sisters and a brother, and we're all from different fathers. And it just so happened that she decided she wanted to work and not be there with the kids, so my grandmother took the kids in and raised us.
Was it tough?
No, I could tell you we didn't eat and all that, but we did. My grandmother raised us really well. My grandmother and grandfather. He was on the President Wilson lines ships. He was a chief steward, and he was always gone. But we had a good childhood as far as that goes. My grandmother, anything you wanted, my grandmother was able to give us.
That's excellent. I know that in San Francisco, back then when you were growing up, there were no major league teams when you were a child, but there was the San Francisco Seals of the Pacific Coast League. How closely did you follow them?
Oh, very well. The secretary of the Seals lived about 10 houses from me. And whenever they needed a bat boy or a ball boy, he'd grab one of us, call us up and say, "You want to do it tonight?" And I was bat boy about 10 times and ball boy about 10 times for the San Francisco Seals. In fact, I was ball boy when Gene Woodling had a great year out there just before he went to the Yankees.
That's very nice. I think Gene Woodling was one of your teammates, wasn't he?
Yes, that's what's so funny. 10 years later, I'm up there with the Orioles, and sitting across from me is Gene Woodling. It was quite a thrill, and I got to be very good friends with Gene, and in fact, he helped me a lot with hitting.
And we'll talk more about that later. So at what point in your life did you want to be a major league player?
Oh, gee whiz. I never even thought about it, and the fact that Major League wasn't even in my mind. Out in San Francisco, they have different leagues that you play in, A League, B League, like that. Well, I was playing in an A League, which you could have a pitcher that pitch as high as A ball in professional. And the team I was on, we got to the championship, and we won the championship, and I hit 2 home runs off this pitcher who had pitched in A ball, and I was walking across the field, and this guy comes up and says, "Hey, do you graduate this year?" And I said, "No, I'm only a sophomore." It's George Kennedy. He was a Pittsburgh scout. And that's the first time we even thought about baseball as far as a profession.
Yes, you knew a thing or two about winning at the high school level. You said about going to Sacred Heart Cathedral Prep. You guys had an excellent string of teams in high school in the 1950s. You won 4 straight AAA championships,
yes.
City championships in San Francisco, and Dick Murray and all those guys. And so you were on that 1951 and 1952 team, and they just have a great history in baseball. Joe Cronin, Harry Heilman, 2 Hall of Famers, went there. You're one of 7 major leaguers to attend that high school. What did it mean to go to a school that produced not 1 but 2 Hall of Famers?
Well, they had their picture up in the hall. We had such a small school. When I went there in the 50s, there was only 500 students. And we played against, of course, the regular public schools, and it was pretty tough when the public schools had anywhere from 18 to 2,000 people, and we only had 500, and you had to fight like hell to get enough to come out for sports. And when Dick Murray took over, he went around and lined up a lot of kids that he knew that he saw play on Sunday baseball. And I was going to Lincoln at the time, and the coach there said I couldn't go out for the varsity because I was a sophomore. I had to play JVs. And Dick asked me how I'd like to go to Sacred Heart, and I said, great. So I had to sit out my sophomore year, but got to play my junior and senior year. And the other thing wrong is I pitched my senior year, which I didn't want to do, but there was nobody else, so I pitched my senior year. And it took away from any, people knowing if I could hit or not. And we won the championship, and I won 12 games, only lost one. So everybody thought I was a pitcher, which I really wasn't. I was a thrower. I could throw harder than most, and that's how I got by.
I was lucky enough last night to talk to your teammate from high school, Ron Jaguero, who's a good friend of yours. He was telling me that you played right field during your junior year in 1951 when you were at Sacred Heart. So what was it like playing right field out there?
Very nervous. I was very nervous because I'd never played the outfield once in a while, but first base was my position, but we had Paul Torrenti playing first, and so he put me in right field, and I was just out there saying, please don't hit it to me, because I didn't know right field from Adam, but we got by, and then, like I say, my senior year, I thought I was going to play first, but he wanted me to pitch, and I ended up with 12 wins, 1 loss, and an ERA of 0.34. I pitched 75 innings. I struck out 134, and then we played the East-West game, and I pitched 9 innings there, and I struck out 17 and won the trip back to New York. But when I went to spring training, they asked me if I wanted to play first or try pitching, and I said, I'd like to try hitting, and thank goodness I never went back.
Dick Murray was a scout for the Dodgers. How much did that play a role in you signing with the team?
Oh, a whole lot. Because almost all the deals that they offered me, the Red Sox and the Phillies and the Yankees, were all about the same, $30,000, and the only difference was that the Dodgers offered me a Double-A contract at $500 a month, so we took that. And Dick Murray and Bill Brenzel and them, they, when I went to my senior prom, they helped me out money-wise to go. And, being with Dick those years, he sort of had the inside track. But I think I made the wrong decision at the time.
Why would you say that?
Because I didn't know about Gil Hodges. I didn't know he was a young man. I didn't know anything about the big leagues. And, they tell you, well, it takes you at least 4 years to get to the big leagues. And after I was in their organization a couple of years, I realized that the Dodgers never changed their infield for 7 years until Jackie retired and Gilliam stepped in. Other than that, they had the same team from 52 to 58. And I just, as long as I had options, no matter how well I did in the minors, if the guy ahead of me didn't go anywhere, I didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, those Dodger teams were a powerhouse in the 50s, including when they won the 1955 World Series.
Right,
but
absolutely.
Since you were originally a pitcher, what kind of pitches were in your repertoire?
One, fastball. That was it. I tried to throw a curveball and hung up in the air, so I just wound up and threw as hard as I could. And like I say, I threw harder than most, and like I said, I was a thrower. I didn't consider myself. When I graduated in 52, I wasn't going to go out until 53, but in August of 52, they asked me to go to Santa Barbara, Class C. One of their pitchers got hurt, and they said, why don't you go on down and see what it's like? And I said, okay, hell, that's a good league. Fresno, Bakersfield, and Ventura. So I went down, I walked in the clubhouse and met George Sugar, the manager, and he handed me the ball and said, "You're pitching tonight." And I was pitched against the San Jose Red Sox. I went 7 innings, I had a no-hitter, and I lost 3-2. Dear friend of mine, later on in years, Marty Keogh, beat me with a triple. And I won 2 and lost 6, and the 2 I won with my own home runs, so 53, when I went to spring training on the Fort Worth roster, they said, "You want to try first base?" And I said yes, and that's why from then on, I just stayed at first base.
Yes, you had a 3.65 ERA in 1952 with the Santa Barbara Dodgers. Who do you credit for helping you with your swing and demonstrating power in the minors? Who do you credit helping you out?
This is terrible. Nobody. Nobody. We had no hitting coaches. You hit or you didn't stay. That was it back then. We didn't have hitting coaches. I went to spring training my second year, and I was on the Fort Worth roster, and Al Vincent was the manager of Fort Worth. And he didn't like my swing because a lot of times I'd come all the way around and hit my hip. And so he took me to the batting cages and had me sit on a bat, the handle of a bat, and he'd feed the pitching machine, and he just wanted me to swing and stop at the top. As soon as I hit the ball, stop. And I did that for all during lunch hour one day, me and him. I got to give him credit. He stayed out there with me for the whole lunch hour. That afternoon, we played a game, and my first time up, I swung. I hit my back, and I got 2 hits that game. I didn't think anything of it. The next day, I went in the clubhouse, and I went to the Fort Worth side, and all my clothes were gone. All my uniform. I said to George, I said, "Where's my stuff? A guy's hiding it?" He said, "No, you got traded to Mobile." Well, Al traded me to Mobile. He figured I wasn't listening to what he wanted me to do, so he traded me off.
Yes, this was in 1954, correct? AA Mobile?
Right.
Yes, the year before, though, you played in Pueblo in Class A ball, and you actually led the Western League with 34 home runs. That must have felt very good, quite an accomplishment for you then.
Well, I did. I mean, 18 years old, they started me in A, and when they sent me to Pueblo, they said, "You'll probably only be there for 27 games, and when everybody starts counting down, dropping guys off, you'll probably go back to the California State League." Well, I started to hit so well that George Fisher decided to keep me, and like I said, I led the league in home runs and drove in over 100 runs, and it didn't do me any good because I went right back there the next year. That's how it was in the Dodge organization. Like I said earlier, if the gentleman ahead of you didn't move, you didn't move. I was in Mobile in 54, and I was up there in home runs and RBIs, but I was only hitting 239 after 20-some-odd games. I was leading the league in home runs in the Southern, and Wozniak calls me in and says he can get Norm Larker back, so they think they ought to send me back to Pueblo to have a good year. Couldn't believe it, but they sent me back to Pueblo for my second year, and I hit 314 with 26 homers and 99 ribbies.
You also did very good, though, in 55, though, in AA Mobile. 290 and 28 home runs, which was a step up from 1954. You hit 233 with 8 home runs in 34 games, so the power was always there. But how were you able to figure out the pitching at that kind of level, though?
Well, the only thing I got from Al Vincent is he said, make sure you cover the outside because you're quick enough to hit the inside. So, and he said, watch the window where the ball comes from. Pitcher wherever he releases the ball. And that's what I did. I tried to follow the ball from the time he started to wind up to the time he let go. And I don't know, it just things just happened for me in the minors. It was just a good time as far as that goes, except I wasn't going anywhere.
That's true because you spent all of 1956 again in AA, but it was a very good year for you. You hit 296, your on-base percentage was .412, which is excellent. 40 home runs, you knocked in 115. How much, if any, was talked about promotion to AAA that season, or if not the majors? How much did they talk about you moving up in the organization in '56?
Well, the thing is I when Buzzy called me in to tell me he would send me back to Double A, I couldn't believe it. I said, "What do you want me to do?" And he said, "Well, the Texas League is a much harder league to hit into. All the organizations send their best pitchers there, and this, that, and the wind always blows over the right field fence in your face." And of course, by then I was not cocky, but I said, "I'm going to hit 25 to 35 any place I play." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will pay you $100 for every home run you hit over 25, and I'll give you $100 for every average over 300." So at the end of the season, he called me up to the Dodgers, but I had a really bad groin injury, and I was there one day, and they sent me home because my leg was terrible. But anyway, I walked in the office. He handed me a check for $1,500.
Yes, this was. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, that was the best they do for me, And then the next year I went to Montreal.
Right.
And the thing that hurt me, where I started to really start to give up, is after Montreal, I thought I had a good year. Now they're going to send me to Spokane, and I didn't care to play at all. I just kind of lost all interest, and I put my hand through a water cooler and took 12 stitches to keep my ring finger on. Just stupid things that year. Really bad.
Well, better things were ahead for you that year because you were called up to the majors for the first time. What was your reaction when you found out you were getting that promotion, you were getting your first call to the majors?
Well, like I say, 56 they called me up, but I was there one day. 57 when they called me up, I took infield with, and everything, and I'm sitting in my locker, and P.B. Reese comes up and says, "Diamond, you're playing today." I said, "No." I said, "I hit with the Humpties. I'm not playing." He said, "Yeah, you're hitting after Campy." And we were playing the Phillies, and Robin Roberts was pitching. And so the first time up against Roberts, I was safe on an error. And the second time up, I took him off the facing and straightaway center field for my first home run. And I got it one more time, and then he took me out. And I didn't play for a long time. He just didn't play me. The most I got was 58 when we were out there in the Coliseum. And that was over 400 some odd feet, the straightaway right. Snyder didn't hit him out of there. So I knew I was dead. But there's a lot of guys like me that had good years in the minors, but there was no room for them in the big leagues at that time. And as long as you had options, they optioned you out.
But when you first got to the majors, what kind of advice sticks out to you? Was there any person, any player, any coach that gave you some sort of advice that sticks out to you in your mind when you're
Roy Campanella.
Yeah.
We went to Japan
right.
in 56, and I led the team in everything.
Yes, you did.
And he talked to me, and he said, "Hey, just hang in there. You're going to just wait. You'll get your shot, and when you do, you got to make the most of it." He said, "Because you've got the power, and everybody knows you can hit. It's just a matter of when you get your shot." So he kind of calmed me down a little bit.
Yes, that was when there was a goodwill tour after the 1956 season. You guys did very well. I think you went 14-4-1 against the All-Stars of Japan. You guys went on a goodwill tour across the land of the rising sun, and you did very well, like you said, and you had some multi-homer games, and yeah, you really exploded for sure. Your first plate appearance, you were against Dick Drott against the Cubs at Wrigley Field. The Cubs will win 9-2, but you did draw a walk in your first plate appearance. Like you said, Robin Roberts, your first home run, he gave quite a few of those, 505. That was also your first big league hit. And you were actually the starting first baseman for the Dodgers in their final game ever at Ebbets Field. What did that What did that mean to you?
Oh, well, to me it was just great to be able to play the last game, but I know it meant more to guys like Snyder and Reese and who've been there for 10 or 12 years, but to me it was just another game, and it is the last game in Ebbets Field, but it wasn't that big a thing to me compared to what it must have been to the regular pros, you know. In fact, they took pictures of Drysdale and I holding an LA flag.
Yes.
I must have got 50 letters from people in Brooklyn telling me they hated me because of going to LA and I'm holding the flag.
Yes, I've heard you say that story before. Yes, and you were up for a little bit in 1958, but you didn't spend any time at all in 1959 in the majors because you spent the entire year in St. Paul. So what do you remember? What do you remember learning then in St. Paul in '59?
Well, let me tell you, I was supposed to have been sold to the White Sox.
Yes.
Buzzy called me in. Bill Veck was taking over the White Sox, and he called me in the office. He told me to pack, be in the lobby. I will fly to Chicago with the Dodgers. I'm sitting in the lobby with my bags packed, ready to go, and Max Bacon comes walking through, the manager of St. Paul, and says, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm taking a plane to Chicago." And he said, "No, I just got out of the office with Buzzy, and he said that they're having difficulty on who they're going to trade you for, and so they want you to work out with me until they get this straightened out." Well, of course, like you said, I spent the whole year there. And Max and I just didn't get along.
What's the reason for that, then?
Well, he didn't like me, and I didn't like him, and I think it happened that one night was at a bar, and he was trying to put the whammy on some girl, and she turned him down and came over and had a drink with me, and I think from then on he didn't like me. I can't say he didn't like me on account of my play because I never played for him before, but he even suspended me the last part of the season.
What was the reason? Did he say what the reason was?
Well, we had just won the game. I went 3 for 5, drove in 2 runs. My roommate Palmquist pitched. He came in, and Mr. Macon had 2 women sitting above the dugout in Omaha, and you can't help but notice them as you're coming in the dugout. Well, he comes in and says, "And keep your eyes off the women in the dugout, above the dugout, Gentile." And we got in an argument. Then, so he suspends me. I go back to St. Paul. I talk to Buzzy, and Buzzy says the reason he suspended you is because you came in the clubhouse and picked a fight with Palmquist. And I told Buzzy, "That's not it at all, Buzzy, but if you want to believe him," I said he was arguing over the 2 girls he had sitting above the dugout. And I told him to go poop in his hat. And then, so he suspended me.
Ed Palmquist, the former major leaguer?
Oh, yeah. He was my roommate. He's a right-hander. And I were good friends. We started out, he was my roommate in Santa Barbara way back in 1952. Anyway, it was he just sent me home. I went home, talked to Buzzy, and told him the truth, and Buzzy sent me back, and I got to Denver. I guess it was the 8th inning when I got there, and I ran across the field, and so he told me to pinch hit, and I pinched hit a home run, and when I come to the dugout, I went to the other end of the dugout. I wouldn't even shake his hand.
For our listeners out there, I believe it was Ron Jackson who was supposed to go the other way with you trying to be sold to the White Sox. It was supposed to be Ron Jackson, but there were better days ahead because come October 19th of '59, the Orioles sent players to be named later and $50,000 to the Dodgers in exchange for you. Bill Lajoie, a career minor leaguer, Willie Miranda, they were the players to be named later. There was a catch, though, because you were given a 30-day probationary period, and so if things didn't work out, they could send you back to the Dodgers along with $25,000 if that didn't work out. So I want to know, what did you work on in spring training with the Orioles in 1960?
Well, it's funny you say that, because sitting here, right here, some guy bought a letter that Lee McPhail sent to Buzzy Vivasi about me. He got it at an auction, and he wanted to buy me outright, but Buzzy said no. And then it just says he named a few guys that they could pick up: Zubrink, Hale, Dunham, Connie Johnson, Marie Marino, Miranda. These are some of the names he said could go in the trade. And down the bottom here, he said, in connection with Commissioner's Notice number 34, which was recently sent out, if you have any suggestions on what kind of contract should I send Gentile? I got this letter that some guy bought at an auction. Anyway, when I went to spring training, you know, they had Bobby Boyd,
right,
a good hitter, Walt Dropo,
Moose,
myself,
yes,
and John Powers came from, I think, the Pittsburgh organization, first baseman, outfielder, and Boog Powell, 18-year-old Boog Powell.
yes.
There's 5 of us over there, so Richards had to try and play all 5 of us, you know, during the spring. And I had a terrible spring, there's no doubt about it. So I figured he was going to send me back, you know, and the last days, the night before, we were going to find out, you know, who's breaking camp. Sparky Anderson called me. And Sparky, I guess, was going to manage Toronto that year. And I went down and had coffee with him, and like I say, Sparky and I were good friends. We played together. He asked me if I would play with him if I was sent back. And I said, yeah, I guess. I said, but 8 years in the minors. I said, that's enough. I said, I'll try to get my release to go to Japan. And but when I went to the clubhouse, I saw Paul Richards. I walked in, and he just looked at me. He says, you just can't be as bad as you look. And he said, 208 home runs in the minor leagues. He said, I need power. He said, I've got 30 days. You only got 36 times in 3 years with the Dodgers. I'm going to give you 120. And if you hit, you're my first baseman. If you don't hit, I'm going to send you back. And that's the way it was. And once the season started, things started to click.
But wasn't Sparky Anderson a player, though, at the time with Toronto? Because I think Mel McGahey managed Toronto at the time, and I don't think Sparky Anderson began his managerial career until '64 in Toronto.
Well, maybe they just sent him there to see if I would play. I don't know, but he said, would you play at Toronto? And I thought he was the manager, but I guess I'm wrong.
But what did McPhail see in you anyway?
I'm sorry?
What did McPhail see in you, Lee McPhail? What did he see in you?
Well, that I don't know. I don't know if it was McPhail who decided to keep me, or whether Richards, or whether maybe Buzzy said, why don't you keep him and give him a shot? I don't know who had the last word in it, but whoever it was, I thanked him. Because they could have sent me back with no, you know, because I didn't. I had a terrible spring. I didn't hit, and I didn't do what I was hoping to do, and like I said, we had all those guys at first base, and but for some reason they decided to give me a shot.
So what was the reason that you didn't have that good of a spring training? Because I should point out, you played in the Panamanian League during the offseason. You played for Marlboro in the Panamanian Winter League. You guys won the championship. You had some very good games. December 22nd, you had a multi-homer game. 4 days later, 6-5 win. You had some very good games in Panama. I'm not sure if you play in the Caribbean Series or not, but you guys won the Winter League in Panama. So what do you think?
I had to go home. I had bone chips. They put me in a cast. I went home about I think the season was close to 3/4 of the way over when I had to go home. And that was another worry going into spring training. Was I going to be able to, run around? I kept the cast on for 6 weeks. And back in California, the doctor took it off and gave me a shot of cortisone. And he said, you might be able to get through a season. I don't know. And I did.
So sorry, go ahead.
But, I mean, whenever I played, I just had to try to do the best I could with all those guys. You play 3 innings, and you put Dropo in, or maybe not play at all one game, and it just whenever you got a chance to play, you tried to do the best you could, and I just didn't do anything. As I remember, I don't know if I got hits or not, but I know I didn't do anything really to let them want to keep me. But for some reason, somebody talked them into it, and I
how'd you get the bone chips, and how much of an impact did that have on your spring training that year?
Well, I just forgot about it. I didn't want to think about it, and my leg, my ankle felt fine. So I just, like the doctor said, go do the best you can, and you might get through the whole year. He said that, but they were like floating chips in my ankle, and because I must have had them a long time, and they just ended up in my where I couldn't walk. So they put, like I say, the cast helped, and then the shot of cortisone, and like he said, they're still there, and they could get in the wrong place again. And at the end of the season of 60, I went in and had them taken out.
So then who broke the news to you that you were staying for good with the Orioles, and what was going through your mind?
Well, the thing is we were getting ready the next morning to leave, and if you didn't have a pink thing in your locker, you were going to make the trip. And then we went into Baltimore, and we had a luncheon, and Richard said the lineup, and I was in the lineup, and I think all the newspaper guys kind of went, what? But on opening day, I made two the first double plays, and I got a double to left center, and the guy, I can't remember the sports writer's name, and he wrote that I got my fielding was excellent, two double plays, to close out the inning, and he said, and he also surprised 42,000 people by getting a hit.
And you would have several more that season, as you and Chuck Estrada tied for second in the American League Rookie of the Year voting, behind only your teammate Ron Hansen, who played shortstop. Yeah. What made that rookie class so special for you guys?
I'm sorry, say that again, please. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. What made the rookie class so special in Baltimore that Ron Hansen won and you and Estrada were co-runners-up?
Well, that's... I just think we just had a team that was gelling. I mean, Estrada was an outstanding pitcher. I think he won, 18, 20 games? I'm not quite sure.
18. I believe he was 18 and 11, I think.
Yeah, and Ron had a wonderful year and was the youngest shortstop to make an all-star team. And I don't know, things started to click. You know, we had Brooks over there, and we had veterans in with the rookies, and then we had Steve Barber come up, and I think it was just the start of the Orioles starting to get back in the groove again, get up into the first division.
Do you think Ron deserved to win?
Oh, yeah. Why not? He had a great year. For a shortstop back then, hit 22 home runs. And all-star at a young age. Oh, yeah, Ron deserved. I didn't even think anything of it until I read in the paper I came in second. But I did have our sports writers come up to me. I had 98 RBIs, and they came up and said, well, we had 3 games left with Washington, and he said, if you drive at 100, I'll vote for you for Rookie of the Year. Well, I didn't play 2 games. Cott pitched and Kralik pitched. I played against Ramos, but... I didn't drive in any runs. No, he deserved it 100%.
So going from... Sorry, go ahead.
I would have liked to win it, but I didn't. But if anybody had to win it, Ron should have won it.
Yeah, there were some numbers for sure. He had 22 home runs, you had 21. Hansen had 86 RBIs, you had 98. Hansen batted 255, you batted 292. You had a 403 on-base percentage compared and a 500 slugging percentage compared to Hansen, who had a 342 on-base percentage, slugged 440, and a 791 OPS. You had a 903 OPS, and plus he had 69 walks and you had 68 walks. But again, I guess it's worth pointing out, though, that you played first base and he played shortstop.
Just like the next year, Harrison Mantle had to go have a great year. They could have waited,
Yes, they could have, but there was a big change going from 1960 to 1961, going from 154 games to 162 games. What was that change like for you?
Well, it just 8 more games, that's all. It gives us a better chance to catch the Yankees. They were the team back then in those years. You had to beat if you wanted to win the pennant. There was no playoffs. You had to win the league. Otherwise, you went home.
That is absolutely true, and I think you guys came in third place that year, I think, behind the Yankees and Detroit, and really shows the kind of team Detroit was and the Yankees. I mean, the Yankees won 109 games, Detroit won 101. I think you guys might have won 95 games, I want to say.
96.
So, I mean, 96.
We were 14 games out at 96. Can you believe that?
That is something else. That really is something else. Yes, indeed. So, this 2 grand slams in consecutive innings, it's worth pointing out that you almost didn't play that game because you had a bruised knee against the Kansas City Athletics, and you considered not playing, but you took batting practice, your knee felt better. How did it get better, and what made you decide to want to take batting practice, and how did you know for sure that you wanted to be in the game?
Well, I know this sounds terrible. I didn't want to get out. I'm there. I finally got a chance to finally playing in the big leagues, and my mindset was, Jesus, if I get out and somebody does good, I could be out of here. That's the way it was. I mean, if you just didn't want to get out of the lineup. You wanted to stay in. My knee wasn't that bad. It was cut up a little bit from running into the wall, but it wasn't that bad. But I knew I could play, so when I went in, the trainer wrapped it up. I said, yeah, I can play. I said, I'm going to take batting practice to see how it feels when I swing. And it didn't bother me, so thank goodness I played.
Your first Grand Slam was against Pedro Ramos, who you mentioned. You faced him the year before in 1960, and now here they are in 61, now as the Twins. And so when did you know the first Grand Slam was gone?
I knew I hit it good. I didn't know if I had enough to get over the 400 mark, but I knew at least I got it up in the air, and I knew a run would score, And with me, that was it. I hated to leave men on base, just because that's what more or less they depended on me to drive-in runs, and it's terrible to leave men on third base or second base with less than 2 outs, but then it kept going, so I'll take it. The thing that's so funny is I hit the Grand Slam on what's the word I want? Well, the first pitch from Gil I hit out, so on consecutive pitches.
Yes.
I hit the home run off Ramos, and then the first pitch I got from Gil, I hit out.
You hit the Grand Slam, go on, yes.
And, it was just one of those days. Then I got up in the top of the ninth with the bases loaded. And I flew out against Moore when I drove in the ninth run.
Ray
Moore? Then I didn't play the next day.
Ray Moore, I thought it was Chuck Stobbs that you faced on the top of the eighth.
I'm sorry?
I thought it was Chuck Stobbs that you faced on the top of the eighth when the bases were loaded the third time.
Well, I thought was it Stobbs? I thought it was Moore, but if it was Stobbs, you know better than I do. I faced Moore the next day. I didn't start, and I pinched hit in the top of the ninth, and I faced Ray Moore, and he struck me out at 3-2 pitch. I took a fastball inside.
Right, because I think Jack Kralik was supposed to pitch for the Twins that day, and then Richards was platooning you guys. I think Woodley may have played first base instead.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's it. It used to be Kite and then Kralik every time we faced the Twins. But I guess it was Stobbs. I thought it might have been Stobbs. I always thought it was Moore. But regardless, whoever got me out.
According to the research I did, it was Stobbs, top of the eighth, but you did hit a sacrifice fly and Jackie Brandt scored. But going back to your first Grand Slam against Ramos, what was your strategy after you were down 0-2 in the count?
Well, now when you get down 0-2, now you just want to make contact with the ball. You know what I mean? You don't take. But the way I swung, it didn't matter if I had 0-2 or whatever. I swung the same way, and he just threw me a high fastball, and I got up on it. And I always kidded Ramos. We became fairly good friends. I always kid with him because a gentleman I know gave me the stats. He's one of the pitchers I hit the most home runs off, 8 off Ramos.
Yeah, he was one of the pitchers that you hit well. I think you also hit 6 home runs off of Bill Monbequette. What was it about Ramos that you hit him so well?
Well, he came three-quarter. And a left-hander, you see the ball real well when they come like that. And he just kept trying to throw the fastball by me, and thank goodness he didn't do it. But he got me out. Don't get me wrong. Eight hits doesn't make a career. But he was a good pitcher. And I was just lucky against him.
And you'd be far from done as far as Grand Slams go. We talked about the Tigers July 1st that year. You hit 2 home runs against them. Bob Bruce, Fred Gladding, and the next day was your 3rd Grand Slam of the season against Phil Regan. So what about Detroit? What was it about Detroit that you caught fire against them in 61? Because you also hit 4 home runs against them in a multi-homer game against them July 20th of that year. So, I mean, you really hit them very well in 61. Tell me about that.
Well, the ballpark was a good park to hit in. It had great background. You could see the ball really well, and I just had a good time against them. Paul Foytak. I hit one of my best balls I ever hit. I hit it on top of the roof in the lights, and it just was a good park to hit in. The fences were just perfect for a long ball hitter, right field, left field. You had to keep it out of center field. That's for sure. I think it was 440 to center, but if you could pull it, you're in good shape.
I understand that in July of that year you jammed your finger, or you jammed your thumb. How did that happen?
Oh, against Kansas City? Yeah, I made the mistake. When the guy bunted, I picked the ball up, and instead of having the ball in my glove, I had it in my hand, and I went to tag him, and he threw an elbow, and it just tore my thumbnail off and jammed my thumb. It was my fault. You should never touch somebody with the ball in your hand, and I did, and he just kind of nudged me with his elbow, and it hurt like hell. It tore my fingernail right off.
Who was this that gave you the elbow?
I don't remember who the batter was. That's what's so strange. I just picked it up real quick, and as he ran by me, I just stuck my hand out to tag him, and I figure he gave me the elbow, but maybe I hit his elbow, so that's why I never said anything that much about it, because it was all my fault. I should have had my ball in the glove, but I didn't, and so I sat out 2 or 3 games.
Right, and that's where we fast forward to July 7th, and you're facing the Kansas City Athletics. July 7th, Marv Breeding, you're pinch hitting for Marv Breeding, and Richards tells you you're pinch hitting, and you wore a golf glove at the time. So what was going through your mind when you were told you were pinch hitting? This is the bases loaded, and you had a standing ovation from the Baltimore crowd.
Well, I had a golf glove on my left hand, and I used a lot of pine tar.
Right.
And I got up, and the first pitch Ed Rackhouse threw me was a high fastball, and I tried to hold up, and the bat went out of my hand and everything, and I got ticked off because the golf glove really, it isn't like the gloves they use now that has stick-em on them and all that. So I just ripped the golf club off and threw it to the side and got back in there, and I guess the adrenaline was flowing because I was mad. And the next pitch was a high fastball, and I hit over the right center field fence.
How was your thumb able to hold up during all that?
That's what I'm saying. After I hit it, it hurt like hell, but at the time it didn't hurt. I guess because I had the adrenaline. I was just so damn mad at the way I almost swung at a ball way over my shoulders, and the bat fell out of my hand, and I was just pissed. I just ripped the in the box, and he just happened to throw the pitch where I could hit it. Then when I round the bases, it was stinging like hell. But I didn't play the second game, but then I played the next day. I started playing every day.
And it's worth pointing out, I'm not sure if you were aware that you had tied the American League record for Grand Slams in a season, because according to the Sporting News in 1961, you hadn't given it thought, but it was nice to be with these names. You were the 7th player in American League history with 4 Grand Slams in one season. The first 6 for our listeners: Rudy York, Tommy Henrik, Al Rosen, Ray Boone, and these 2 other guys named Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. That's quite some company to be in.
Yes. Anytime you're mentioned with players like that, because they were way above my status.
But you wouldn't be done, though, because you would eventually set the record all by yourself and hit the final Grand Slam of your career, because you also had a Grand Slam in 1960. But the 5th Grand Slam in 61 came against the White Sox. Don Larson was on the mound September 22nd. And what's funny enough is all 5 of your Grand Slams that season came in games started by Chuck Estrada.
Yes, and if you check the first one I hit, Chuck Estrada also.
I believe that I do. I think I remember looking it up. I think I remember seeing that. Yes. So I don't know if that was just some kind of coincidence. That's just how things go. But
I don't know. I didn't know that either until the gentleman told me. He said, "You hit all your Grand Slams when Estrada pitched." It's I don't know. It's just one of those things. But I don't know. When you get mentioned in the names that you said, it's funny. I've always said, they asked me, and I know with my swing, a lot of people didn't like it. I did swing hard, and I'd hit my back once in a while, but that's the way I did it since I was a kid. We didn't lift weights way back in the 50s, and I used to use just a hand squeezer every night before I went to bed. Used to drive my grandmother crazy, going squeak, 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 squeak. And then when I got to be my senior year, my coach, Dick Murray, drilled a hole in the bat, and we put about a pound and a half of lead in it, and I swung that 20 minutes a night. That's the best I did, trying to get strong. And I don't know. As we went on in my career, I would say, look, I told Lee McPhail, I'm going to hit you 25 to 35 home runs a year, and I'll drive in 75 to 100 runs. And I said, with my swing, I'm going to hit between 250 and 270. I said, I might have a good year once in a while, but most of the time I'm going to be in that vein. And I just looked, the other day I was talking to somebody, and we looked it up, and when you look at my totals, it averages up to 25 home runs a year and 78.4 RBIs. So I wasn't too far off.
And those are good averages. It's been talked about, and it goes without saying that you're overshadowed by Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle in New York. But I'm wondering, though, with how big of a market New York is and the Yankees and with what Maris and Mantle were doing, did that take any pressure off of you and allow you to perform and going unnoticed?
I really didn't pay much attention to it. I mean, I was just trying to have a good year. And when we went to the All-Star game, I think we all were 25 to 27 at that time. And I never thought of leading the league or being up there or anything like that, but it just seemed like everything was happening well for me. And come August, I think it's still an Oriole record. I hit 15 home runs in August, which is September was always my bad month. I don't know why, but August I hit 15, and that put me back up there. But then all of a sudden they just kept on hitting them, and I got into September with 43. Excuse me. And I thought, well, maybe I could hit 50. There's only a few guys back then that hit 50. And I got to 46, and that was it.
Which All-Star game, because you played in 6 of them, and there were 2 All-Star games a year between 59 and 63. Of the 6 All-Star games, teams that you were a part of, which one sticks out to you and why?
one in my hometown, San Francisco.
Okay.
I was the alternate, and Lon Simmons was introducing the players.
Yes.
And he gets to me and he goes, and from the Baltimore Orioles, number 4, Don Gentile.
Don?
Don. I started out the dugout and I looked at him, and he knows me as well as and so I went out, and at the after he introduced everybody, he walked in the door. I said, Jim, I'm sorry. So when I saw Gentile, Don Gentile was an ace flyer in World War II.
Okay.
And they wrote a book about him. And he said, it just Don popped in my. I said, all right. I said, but you watch. You put the hex on me, I'll have a bad day. Well, Stu Miller struck me out twice, and I made an error. So, that sticks out more than anything else.
That is some story. I've honestly never heard that one. But after 61, Paul Richards left the Orioles. He resigned and joined the Houston Colt 45s, the expansion team. What did you take to that?
Well, I felt bad about it because, Paul was a manager. I mean, he ran everything. I mean, you didn't go to the bathroom without him knowing how long you were up there. I just had a good feeling with him. I was sorry to see him go, but then he bought me to go to the Astros, and I just didn't do anything for him. I really felt bad about that. But as time went on, my back really started to bother me, and I didn't say anything to anybody, and I'd get a stiff back every once in a while. I used to have to go get whirlpools and hot blankets on me to try to loosen it up. But again, I was at that frame of mind. You can't get out of the lineup. You got to get in the lineup, stay in the lineup. And there were days I was fine, and days that it was just bothering me the holy hell. I didn't feel like I could really take a good cut. But those are the way baseball was back then. It was completely different.
I think I read a piece from Dick Williams in the Baltimore Sun in 1995, where you said that you put, you put something to protect your back, to protect you with your swing. And I think I also read that you wore a sponge on your thigh to help you out so you wouldn't hurt yourself with your powerful swing.
Yeah, that was in 53 when I went to Pueblo. I hit my back a few times and it bruised it, so they put a pad on there, sponge pad. The first time I went out with it on, I felt like a hunchback, and I went out there and I swung and I came around and hit that, and the bat came around and the catcher was moving. I hit him right in the mask and on my backswing. So I decided, no, I'm not wearing this. So I took it off and I never wore it again. I wore it just 1 or 2 games, and I said, not going to do it.
So you didn't wear the sponge pad on your back, but you did wear one on your thigh, is that correct?
No, I didn't wear any. I just decided I wasn't going to wear any.
How did you take to Billy Hitchcock taking over for Paul Richards? Because...
Didn't like it at all. He changed my stance. He's the one, and you can't, it's hard to blame anything on anybody, but when I hit home runs, excuse me, right center, left center, center field, I never pulled right down the line. Well, of course, he wanted me to pull the ball more. He said, it's shorter. He said, you pull the ball. And he opened my stance. And after all these years, you open your stance, I just couldn't do it. I led the league in home runs in foul territory, but not in fair territory. And then, even though I hit 33, I was uncomfortable. And so I kept trying it. And then when it got time, after the second year there, I said, hell with it. I'm going to go back. Now you got to try and find your old stance. Now you got to try and get your muscles to get back into the old way. And I just couldn't get it started again. I changed my stance probably 20 times. But that's one thing and another.
That couldn't have been comfortable, and I want to point out to you an April 1963 article from Sports Illustrated. I'd like to quote an excerpt right here. "No curfew," he proclaimed that last spring, and the reaction was a prompt whoopee. Calling a belated meeting to announce a get tough policy early in the season, Hitchcock was interrupted by a clear, loud voice shouting an obscenity at him from the back of the room. End of the meeting. When Hitchcock told Milt Pappas to take a turn in the bullpen, the highly paid pitcher said, "Go to hell," stormed out of the dressing room, and held court in the press box. When brilliant Truck Estrada began losing twice as often as he won, he took to racing around in his flashy convertible until the small hours. Jim Gentile and Jackie Brandt, outstanding players from the year before, decided that they couldn't be bothered running out ground balls. End quote. How much of that is true?
That's bullshit. I read where sometimes you don't run ground balls. I read if you didn't run ground balls off, they fined you. So how can that happen? Paul Richard would fine you $25 if you didn't run a ball out. And I never had any trouble. The only time I had trouble with Hitchcock, we were in New York, and Downing's pitching. He throws me a fastball inside. I try to get out of the way and hits my bat. It's rolling foul. I take about 10 steps, and it looks like it's going to stay foul. And I don't know what it hits, but it bounces back fair, and they tag the base. I'm out. And Richards, boom. I mean, not Richard, but Hitchcock, $25. I got fined. And I couldn't figure it out. I started to run. It looked like it was foul. He said, "You didn't run it out." That's the only time. I'll go to my grave saying I never didn't run a ball out. I just don't know where that came from. I really don't.
This was. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Finish.
Well, I'm just saying. I just don't know where that came from. Where I don't run balls out. You couldn't. You had to run balls out, or you got fined. I mean, I don't know. I did a lot of stupid things in my career, but that's not one of them.
I swear on my life I didn't make that up. I just an excerpt that I found in a Sports Illustrated issue from '63 on a feature story about the Orioles. I'm not making up. Just thought I'd bring it to your attention and see what you made of it. That's all.
Well, I understand that. I mean, I just don't know where it comes from, where someone could say that, because if you didn't run the ball out, you got fined. I mean, that's how it was. You just they're not going to put up with it. What do they do nowadays? They don't run balls out, at least hard. And we got fined if you didn't run balls out. They didn't put up with it. And then to put something like that, I don't know where they got it, but that's fine. What the hell?
But when you were inducted into the Orioles Team Hall of Fame in 1989, Billy Hitchcock showed up, and at the time, Earl Weaver was known for wearing number 4, and Hitchcock was quoted as saying, "In my day, number 4 was Jim Gentile. He was some kind of home run hitter and RBI man. He could catch that ball at first base, too. Old Jim was such a temperamental fellow. He only got mad at himself. He never got mad at me. I saw him 4 years ago, and he was a different sort of fellow. Very low-key. Jim expected to hit a home run every time up, and when he didn't, he'd break a bat. Although I never saw him break one over his thigh like Bo Jackson." What do you make of that?
Well, that's another thing, and he's right there. If I had a bad day and we won, I went around and said, "Nice going, Estrada, nice going, whoever," that's about as much of a celebration as we had. You'd say, "Nice going," the guy, and everything. And then I might sit in my locker because I would think about it. Well, how did I miss that fastball? How did I just took the game serious. I knew if I didn't hit, it took me 7 years to get there, and if I didn't hit, I wasn't going to stay. And I would get down on myself. But I never caused any trouble with teammates, never had any trouble with any of them, as far as that goes. But they always write about how he gets mad at himself. Well, I was mad at myself. If I leave a man on third and one out and I don't drive him in, I'd be upset with myself. But I never, if I had a good day and we lost, I'm the same way as if we, or vice versa. I never celebrated. It was just another game. I got a couple of hits, fine. It's another day I earned to stay in the big leagues. But I never so I hung around my locker a little longer than most guys. But like I say, I never had any trouble with other teammates or anything like that.
Which is good, but I do wonder, though, with how psychological of a game baseball is, how you're able to keep your emotions in check by doing so, still managing to succeed, with how much of a mental aspect there is to the game.
Oh, a lot. And like you said, I'd break a bat. I got called out one time facing Whitey Ford. I thought it was a ball, and as I walked away from the plate, I broke my bat on the plate. And, just every once in a while, it catches up with you. But it's good if you have a different attitude. One of the greatest guys, my dear friend Brooks Robson, he's happy all the time. I mean, he could take the good with the bad. I just had a tough time taking the good with the bad for me. You know what I mean? If I had a bad day, I had to think about it. I had to wonder what I did wrong. I don't want to do it tomorrow. And, I just showed it, I guess, more than anybody else. And some people didn't like it. They thought I shouldn't be that way, but that's the way I was. I mean, it takes you 7 years to get to the big leagues. You just can't be happy all the time.
But even still, after your monster 1961 season, you still led all baseball with 16 intentional walks in 1962. But the Orioles, they won 77 and 85 that year. And what do you think were some of the main forces behind the decline in record?
Well, we just didn't score the runs that we had to. And like I say, you had to win the championship, and while we weren't winning, the Yankees and Detroit and those guys were winning, and we didn't win the close games back then. But as you notice, once as the years went on, they got better and better. I think from starting with 1960, the Orioles started to make a name for themselves again. Instead of being fifth and sixth in the league, they got up to third, second, and then 66? Did they win everything in 66 or L.A.? I can't remember.
They swept the Dodgers in 66.
Okay, all right, yeah, and again, they got the ball club together, and I think the biggest move they made was getting Frank Robinson.
Right.
That was a great move, and he brought what I think camaraderie with the team. He brought in what they used to call their court, the kangaroo court or something.
Okay.
Different things like that. It brought the teams together. Instead of you show up at 3:00, say hello to everybody, go out, batting practice, infield, play the game, and go home. Now he's bringing the team together. And that's what you needed was the things to get the guys together instead of just showing up, playing the game, and going home. I think he made the Orioles from the day he got there.
He won the Triple Crown that season and still the only player to win an MVP in both leagues. And that year in 66, they were managed by Hank Bauer, and he was a coach in your last year there in 63. He was a former Marine, and Hitchcock, he cracked the whip on the club. What kind of impact did Hank Bauer have on you when you were there, given his kind of attitude and his background as a former Marine?
Oh, he was a great coach. I mean, anything, if you needed something, he'd do it for you. He was like Luman Harris was when Richard was there. If you needed extra batting practice, you could say, Luman, I'd like to hit. And you could go, he'd meet you there at 3:00 and throw as long as you wanted to hit. And Bauer, anything you asked him to do or needed, he'd do it. He was a baseball man, 100%.
So how much of a surprise to you was it when you found out you were being traded to Kansas City, and if any of that was discussed beforehand?
Well, the thing that got me is we were called down when they signed Hank. The guys like Barber, myself, Pappas, Triandis, Fisher, we all lived in Baltimore, so they had us all come down to the ballpark there when he's about signing, and then we had a meeting after, and Bauer was talking about what he's looking for next year, and this, that, and the other, and he told me, he said, I'm looking for a good year out of you. And I'd already been traded, for Christ's sake. I didn't know that. And I got home, and the phone rang, and about about 2 days later, and I answered it and said, "Hi, Jim, this is Lee McPhail." I said, "Hi." He said, "Well, listen, I just wanted to call and thank you for the 4 years you had with us. You really had got the Orioles on the right direction, and I'm just calling to let you know we traded you to Kansas City, and we hope you have the same years that you had with us, and thank you for the 4 years." I never said a word, and I hung up, and he hung up. And that was it. That's how I learned I was traded. So, but it turns out I was traded in November, back at the winter meeting.
Okay, so you had already been traded then. You had already been traded at the time when Hank said he was looking for a good year for you in '64. Did Hank know about this?
And that's what got me. I mean, I thought, I was really looking forward to we were all going to the Y, running and everything, getting in shape, and I already been traded, and they could have told me when they called me down to the office or something, but they traded me at the winter meetings, and that was it. I never got to say a word. I went over there to Kansas City.
And McPhail never told you why nothing was said all those years?
No. Just best of luck, and we'll be seeing you. Bye. I never said a word. I just listened to everything he said, and he hung up. That was it. That's how they told you.
You must have been really confused at that point.
Well, I knew we had Boog, and Boog turned out to be an outstanding player for the Orioles, and I knew that was going to happen, but I didn't know it was going to happen that quick. I thought I might have one more year there, and but no, it didn't happen. I was supposed to go to the White Sox.
Right.
According to the paper, I was supposed to go to the White Sox, and then the White Sox were going to trade with the A's, and the A's were going to give them Seaburn. And the White Sox and the A's couldn't get together, so he sold me straight out to the Athletics. So, just one of those things. That was baseball back then. You didn't have any agents or anything like that. You went where they told you.
Okay, so let me get this straight here, okay? So you were supposed to be traded again. You were supposed to go to the White Sox, this time from the Orioles to the White Sox. And then the White Sox would flip you to the Athletics for Norm Seaburn. I'm catching that correctly?
Well, then the White Sox were supposed to send a player to the A's. And the A's were supposed to send Seaburn to the Orioles.
Okay.
And the White Sox and the A's couldn't get together on a trade, so McPhail just went straight to the Kansas City and sold me there.
So what was it like playing for Charlie Finley?
I'm sorry?
What was it like playing for Charlie Finley?
Playing for Charlie wasn't bad. I have no complaints about Charlie. I just don't understand how he waved me out of the league in '65. No team in the American League wanted me, and I've got an article from the Baseball Digest, the sports writer from Detroit, said, how in the world a guy hits 156 home runs in 5 years and nobody wants him? It's just a good old boy trade, is what he said. You don't claim my man, I won't claim yours. So I went over there to Richards for $150,000 and 2 players.
How different do you think things would have turned out if Billy Hitchcock never changed your batting stance?
I think it would. For me, it would have been better. And I have nothing against Billy. He's doing his manager's job, but it just didn't work for me. And that's what got me. And there's articles that say I was hard to handle. I don't understand what they mean by that. I never gave a manager a bad time. I never argued with managers. And I don't understand when they say I give him a bad time. I mean, he came and asked me to change my stance, and we worked on it, and it just didn't work for me. It just made me uncomfortable. But as far as a manager and a person, Billy Hitchcock was fine. In fact, he's the one who introduced me, like you said, back when I went in the Oriole Hall of Fame. He's the one who introduced me. So people say things and they don't know exactly what's going on, or they just, and I hate to say this to a newspaper man, but sometimes they make things
I'm sure you must have really enjoyed hitting a Municipal Stadium because when Charlie O got you, he paired you up with Rocky Colavito, another great home run hitter with Cleveland and Detroit, and he moved those fences in, so I'm sure you must have really took advantage of those fences at Municipal Stadium in Kansas City.
The fences were only there for one home stand. He moved the right field. He built some seats inside the right field fence, and the commissioner made him take it down.
Okay.
And it didn't do us any good. It didn't, as far as home runs or anything, it didn't do us any good. But he thought it might help. He was mad at the Yankees, I think. He wanted to make it short right field fence. But the commissioner said you can't do that. You can't build something during the season, I think is what the reason was, if I'm right. I'm not sure. But he had it there for one home stand, and then he had to take it down.
But you guys still did hit home runs. You know, Colavito hit well. That was his only year with the Athletics. So, I mean, he already traded Colavito back to Cleveland. You know, you hit home runs, but the problem was the Athletics, they gave up home runs. 220 home runs surrendered by the pitchers, to be exact. Not to mention they changed managers from Eddie Lopat to Mel McGahey to Haywood Sullivan, all during your time there. So what do you think was the biggest problem with those teams out in Kansas City?
Well, back then Finley wanted to run everything. Excuse me. Finley wanted to run everything, and he listened to games on the phone, and if he didn't like what was going on, he'd call the dugout. You know, he just wanted to run everything because Eddie Lopat was a great manager as far as he was a player's manager, you know, and McGahey came and he didn't do very well, so he got rid of him and brought in Sullivan. But when Rocky left, he more left it up to me for the long ball, as Finley would say. Well, when he traded me, Mickey Mantle and I were leading the league in home runs with 10. And that's when he traded me to Houston, to Paul Richards.
What was your relationship like with Colavito?
Oh, great. We were roommates. Great guy. I used to get on him. I said, will you leave somebody on base for me? You know, I hit after Rocky. And Rocky wouldn't leave anybody on base. He was an outstanding ball player.
He sure was. But when you talk about being traded to the Astros, the good news is you're reunited with Paul Richards, you know, and all the people I've talked to who played for Richards, they all liked him a lot. But I'm wondering, did that do anything to you psychologically to be traded from Kansas City to Houston so abruptly?
Well, it did, because I didn't think of it. Again, ball players, we didn't know all the ins and outs. After I was there was an article in the paper. How could they trade me to the National League in mid-season? And then they wrote this article about you have to be waived out of all the other teams. And I even went, for the heck of it, I went back through the encyclopedia. There wasn't anybody had a first baseman that had a good year. So I was wondering, you know, the Angels or Cleveland or someone could. Nobody wanted me. It kind of makes you feel bad.
So then, what was it like playing in the National League? What was it like playing in the other league, and especially knowing that your home ballpark was in the Astrodome?
Well, you know, Astrodome, they used to have to hit them up in the seats. You really had to put a charge in the one in the Astrodome to hit a home run. I just didn't get started, and then when I came back in '66, it was the same thing. I just think that we had Grady Hatton as a manager, and things just did. He didn't want me in the first place. I asked to be traded because he brought down Joe Morgan and Sonny Jackson, you know, and guys up from and Harrison up from Oklahoma City, and he wanted. And they were going to be great players, no doubt about it. But he didn't really want me on the club, and because I was 30 years old, and I asked to be traded, and he said no. Tal Smith said, no, we need some older guys on the club. And I played in and out, and and that stupid thing with the umpire, and I got sent down to Oklahoma City and for a week, and 27 games, and I had 11 home runs, and Cleveland bought me. But Bertie Tebbetts, when he bought me, said he only wanted me as a pinch hitter, and that just is with my swing. I had to get up 4 times. DH would have been just perfect for me.
Yeah, but the DH didn't come until, I think, 1973, when Ron Blomberg against Louis Tiant. But you did reunite with Colavito in Cleveland. You hit 2 home runs in 33 games, but that was your last stop in the majors. I think I recall reading, before I called you and did this interview with you, after your monster year in 1961, you actually worked at a car dealership. So what did you do in 1967 and 68 before you went to Japan? Was it the car dealership? Was it something else?
No. I played in the Coast League.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Coast League. San Diego.
All right.
We won the championship in 67. And I played sparingly in 68 as a player coach. And then I went to Japan in 69. You
went to Osaka. You played for the Osaka Kintetsu Buffaloes. I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly. What was your reason for going to Japan, and were there any teams you were looking to be with? Was there anybody else who was interested in you in Japan?
No, I was living in San Diego at the end of the season, and I bumped into, for Pete's sake, I just told you his name, who beat me with a triple. Now it went out of my mind. Anyway, he was over there the year before, that year, with the Kuntutz Buffaloes, but he was now going to be a scout for the new Padres. So I sent a telegram to the Kuntutz Buffaloes, and they sent me back and said they would love to have me come over. And I got to go back to 67 when I get the Phillies by me. And I go to spring training with the Phillies, and Mr. Quinn says to me, well, we're not going to put you on the roster. We don't have room for you now, but we know Bill White's out with a ruptured Achilles tendon, so we want to have you there to play first base until Bill comes back and everything. And I said, well, what about a contract? He said, well, once we break camp, we'll be able to put you on the roster. So I go to spring training, Gene Mock's there, and we have a talk, and he tells me the same thing, but then when we start playing games, I'm playing B games. John Briggs is just playing first base, and the second baseman from the Phillies is playing first. I'm going, well, he says, I know what you can do. I just got, in case you get hurt, who am I going to have? So we get to the last day of spring training, and he calls me out of the office and says, I haven't got room on your roster. I'm going to keep an extra pitcher. And I said, oh, well, what about me? He said, well, you got to see Mr. Quinn. So I go back to the hotel, and here comes Mr. Quinn, and walking across the president. I see him, and I said, Mr. Quinn, Jim Gentile. I said, we're talking about my contract. He says, well, when I talk to you, you were in the big leagues. He says, you now minor leaguer. You have to see so-and-so. So I go see so-and-so. I can't remember his name, and he tells me they've got me on the San Diego Padre roster out in California. I have to see Eddie Leishman. So I drive from Clearwater, Florida to San Diego. I go in the office. Now I'm making $30,000 in the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, well, what about my contract? He said, well, the best I can do, Jim, is $10,000. And I said, a $20,000 cut? How do you expect me to live on $10,000 with a wife and 3 kids? And he said, well, that's the best I can do. And I said, well, how about my release? Can I have my release? He said, no, then they'll just put you on a restricted list. They're not going to release you. So for 2 years, I had to pay for I played player coach for $10,000. Now we jumped into the 68 season. I get this deal to go to Japan. They're going to pay me $25,000 plus all expenses and everything. So I call the Phillies and I ask, you're not going to keep me. I'm on a AAA roster. Eugene, I said, you've got Aaron's brother playing first base. I said, I'll go to spring training, you'll release me, and I'll be nowhere. I said, I have a good job lined up with the Guntus Buffaloes. Could I have my release? Yeah, for $5,000. I said, what? I had to pay him $5,000 for my release so I could go to Japan. So I paid him, and I went to Japan in '69.
Another excerpt, according to page 106 in a book called Remembering Japanese Baseball, quote, "It's an adjustment, that's what it was, and some guys can never adjust to Japan. It really bugs some guys like Jim Gentile. He could just never adjust to it." End quote. So, were you able to adjust to it? Did it bother you? How accurate is that quote, that statement?
Well, it's kind of a stupid statement when I ruptured my Achilles tendon opening day. And I was out almost 2.5 months. I only got up 83 times. Now, how did I not adjust to Japanese baseball? So that's the best I can tell you. I got up 83 times, hit 9 home runs, drove in 20-some-odd runs, and I hit 270. But they didn't want to bring me back, so nothing I could do. But I don't understand how you can say I didn't adjust when I opened my Achilles tendon, and I still hit 9 home runs and 83 times up. So I don't know. Whatever they want to say.
You still had some power, but that was the end of your playing career. So, what did you miss the most? What did you miss the most about the game, and what did you do after you left professional baseball?
Well, after I left baseball, that was my biggest thing. What am I going to do? I've been in baseball for 18 years. Well, anyway, I went to work for a tire company, Globe, and I worked for them, learned the tire business, and then I went from there. I got a Midas Muffler franchise and kept that. Did that for a couple of years. I sold that, came to Oklahoma, and I worked for a company here, a tire company, and then I got 5 years in independent baseball, managing independent baseball.
Yes, the Fort Worth Cats. How did that come into fruition?
Well, what do you call it? I saw in the paper that Fort Worth was going to build the stadium right where it was in 1956, and this, that, and the other. And Pete O'Brien, the ex-major leaguer, was part of it. So I called him and talked to him, and he asked me if I was interested in managing, and I said, yeah. So I went down and I managed there for 2 years, and then I went to the Missouri Mavericks for 2 years, and then I went to Schaumburg Flyers for a year.
Yes, you did do a lot of managing. In 2001, even though you guys didn't win the championship, you won 37-35, and you did go to the playoffs. So what did you do to get the most out of your players as a manager? What was your managerial style like in all these trips for all these different teams?
Well, I was in a learning process myself, but I just told them we're going to hustle, we're going to give 100% every game, and independent ball is so different. When you have an owner that if he doesn't like a player, he'll just let him go. And you'll come into the park one day and your third baseman's not there anymore. What happened? Well, Gary didn't like it. Gary called him in the office and let him go. So now you got to look up a third baseman. You got to find somebody, go on the internet and see who's available. And so it's a little different than organized ball, independent ball. And I just told him we'd give it 100% and go from there. And the first year there, we should have won the playoffs, but a couple of my pitchers, one guy who thought he was Mr. Whitey Ford didn't cover first base, and we lost 3-2 to knock us out. But I just try to instill play hard, and I yank pitchers pretty fast, I guess. If it looks like he was running out of gas, I got him out of there as quick as I could. But I enjoyed it. It it was a learning process for me too, and starting at age 67 was a little different, riding buses again, and I enjoyed it and had a good time at it. And after that, once I got out of that, because I had retired at 57, I got out of the tire business, and I would just be doing personal appearances, and we had a baseball camp up here in Chandler, and I ran that for 8 years, and just a little bit of everything, and now I'm just taking it easy. It'll be 83 in 2 weeks.
Yes, happy early birthday, June 3rd, I believe.
Yeah.
Last but not least, mentioned earlier at the beginning of this interview, 49 years in the making. So Roger Maris was credited for an extra RBI for when he shouldn't have been given. And so 49 years later, after 1961, it was discovered that he was given one RBI too many. And therefore, he led the league, and you led the league, 141 RBIs. It was promised in your contract you would get a $5,000 bonus if you led the league in RBIs, and the Orioles made good on that promise in 2010. What did it mean to you? What was your reaction when you found out that you were going to get a $5,000 bonus, and what did you do with the money?
That's the funny part. I didn't know about it. They had invited me back to do what we call the suites. You go back there for 2 days, and you go up into the suites, and you go around and sign autographs for the people in the suites. And so they invited me back to do that. And while I was there, they said, "Hey, we'd like you to throw the first ball out." And I said, "Okay." So I walk out. The girl walks me out to the mound, and I said, "You have a ball?" And she said, "No." Well, that's funny. And I see the ball there on the mound, and I thought, "How about this one?" She said, "No, that's the game ball." So I turned to home plate because I figured the catcher has one. I turned to home plate. There's nobody at home plate. And I'm going, holy. And then I hear the guy talking about 1961, da-da-da-da. And then that if he would have led the league in RBIs, he would have got $5,000. So here comes Lee McPhail's son out with one of those big golf-type checks. You know, they give it the golf things worth $5,000. That's the first I heard of it. Come running out with a $5,000 check, and I almost fainted, for Pete's sake.
So it was a surprise to you. You didn't know about this.
Didn't even know about it. Complete surprise.
What'd you do with the money?
Put in the bank, pay a few bills, but that was a real good weekend for me because I did the suites for $2,500, and I did a card show for $3,000, so I came home with almost $10,000, a little over $10,000.
Hey, that's not bad. Very smart move to put it in the bank, I gotta say. Well, Jim Gentile, you've been an excellent guest. I want to thank